Right. We had three of the greatest bodybuilders in the world. That's a fact. 1964, Kingsley Porty wins Mr. World. Okay? You have Glenn Wells, who shortly thereafter defeats even Kingsley. He doesn't win it, but he's one of the great bodybuilders. And then, of course, we have Tony Carroll, the late, great Tony Carroll. Of course, he spent many years up in New York, in Timbuktu, lifting up with the kids.
Who was the one who would walk downtown during Junkanoo time?
He was Tony Carroll. And Tony Carroll, you think about 1965, Tony Carroll is just finished doing his workout. He walks in New York City, comes up Times Square, and he only has his warm-up stuff on. Now, you know how big Tony Carroll was.
Yeah.
The police pick him up, they escort him home because too many tourists are watching him. Okay? He was the initial man in chains even before Isaac Hayes and Shaft. But we think about that in the bodybuilding, what we've gone through in this country. And you come back, you fast forward, we've seen in recent times, we've seen Charlie Kemp, obviously in Mr. Olympia, we've seen Joel Stubbs. Darold. I don't think any bodybuilder in the world has done with Joel Stubbs in terms of his background, being a pilot for Bahamas all those years, only in his 40s, in international competition doing it. So therefore, what I'm saying is this: we don't have to reinvent the wheel. Okay? The wheel's there, it has turned, but we must understand from leadership in this country, and it has to be big. It can't be small.
This is not political leadership we're
Absolutely,
talking about.
absolutely, absolutely. But sometimes that too. Sometimes that too. We've got to be serious and we've got to be real as to where we want to go and how we perceive things. And you think about the Golden Boys or the Fantastic Four, whatever you like. They've got to realize that they have run a relay, not just of the 4x400 in 2012. And you go back to the very first time, for example, I can only think about the very first time this country. Can you imagine, you go to the 1950s when the Bahamas participates in its first international track and field competition. Now, here's 1954, you have the British Empire and Commonwealth Games, and that's in 1954. You have it starting on July 31st. Now, my hair is full of mush, so you gotta excuse me on this. But all of us, we never talk about Arrington Mickey Isaacs. We never talk about, for example, Cyril Peepside Johnson. We never talk about Leonard Skeeter Dames. Those guys participated in the very first one. Of course, we go to 56.
Athletics.
Absolutely. And these guys were there and starting out. Cyril Richardson, you make noise about...
What did Minky do?
Minky was the very first athlete. He was up. He was the very first athlete to participate, and Minky really was an all-around sportsman. You're talking about
What was his event?
Terrific trackman, sprinter. Okay, you're talking about Ricky Isaac, terrific trackman. You're talking about Peepside Johnson. He was the middle distance man. He was the middle distance man, and all the stuff, 1500s, 3000, 5000 meters, and then of course you talk with Leonard Skeeter Dames, whose son, by the way, still on the Royal Bahamas Police Force, still is junior, and was an outstanding athlete in high school. Went to school with him, same class. But he was a sprinter. But Darold, to understand where we have been, to know where we are, you have to understand where now we should go. And it's a serious, serious quest. And I wanted, nobody calls his name, but Cyril Richardson, okay? He was then the manager and president of that team. Nobody calls his name anymore. And we need to understand just where we would have been. So therefore, the relay did not start, as you know, in 2012. For the guys. The relay started a long time ago. Maybe I can go back for it, and that maybe there's St. Matthew's church bell.
Let's take a pause right now because we have to go to our news break. This is Darold Miller Live. We are so pleased to have as our very special guest today, former FNM Member of Parliament, Attorney Kendal Wright. We'll be back in just a moment.